Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to welcome Amy Berger to our conversation today. Amy is a certified nutritional specialist and US Air Force veteran who helps people navigate keto with a no-nonsense approach, what she basically calls Keto Without the Crazy. She's also an author of the Alzheimer Antidote and the Stole Slayer and a co-author of End Your Carb Confusion with Dr. Eric Westman. Amy is basically an expert in everything to do with insulin resistance, metabolic health, weight loss, Alzheimer. But today, probably the most important thing we would like to dive deeper into is keto. I've connected with Amy during the most recent GAPS conference where we're both speakers, and I've absolutely loved Amy. I loved your talk. I loved how you explained what keto is, how you turn all this complex information into very easy to understand concepts. And I thought, our audience is going to be benefiting from the way you explain things as well. So I'm so glad to have you here. So welcome to our chat.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction. Thank you for inviting me.
So can you actually briefly introduce yourself, your work, and tell us what actually inspired you to specialize in keto?
Yeah, my story is not uncommon for people, I think, who get into the health and nutrition field. I found low carb diets through my own issues. I was overweight for most of my childhood and young adult life, and I was never obese. I never had morbid obesity, but I was heavier than I sh thought I should have been based on my diet and exercise. I spent years doing what I thought were all the right things and not getting anywhere. And, I spent years blaming myself. I must not be working hard enough. I must need to eat even less or change my diet in some other way. And when I found low carb, my first exposure to it was actually Dr. Atkins, with the Atkins diet. And it was one of Dr. Atkins' new diet revolution. So his book from the 1990s. And it just made sense. It clicked in my head. And I tried it. And like so many other people, I did not stick with it immediately the first time after I tried it. I definitely stopped and started again many times, well, not many, a few times until it stuck and it was just sort of the permanent way that I would eat after that. And I did lose the weight, and I have a family history of type 2 diabetes and cancer and stroke. And I have no doubt that if I hadn't found low carb or keto when I did, I would now probably be afflicted with some of those issues because I found it more in my mid to late 20s and kind of made it my permanent way of eating around that time or my early 30s. And I was just so fascinated by the science, and I just wanted to learn more. Why am I having success doing basically the opposite of what we are told is a healthy way to eat or the best way to lose weight? Here I am eating more red meat, more animal fat, not eating a lot of fruit, not eating all those quote unquote healthy whole grains, and I'm, doing better than ever. And so I just got so interested, and I was in and out of jobs that were not fulfilling, did not enjoy them. And it occurred to me, nutrition is a career. Maybe I could go back to school and help other people with this amazing low carb keto diet. So I did. I changed careers, got a master's degree in human nutrition, and now I do this. And even though I tell people now, even though I came into low carb and keto for my specific personal reason of weight loss, and I do still help people with weight loss, what I've learned and what we as a field, as a profession now know about ketogenic diets and how incredibly powerful they are for so many different things. Weight loss is one of the least impressive things that can happen to you if you eat this way. I mean, there's papers now coming out on keto having remarkable effects on bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, PCOS, reversing type 2 diabetes. It's incredible what this can do. So, that's the long answer to to your short question.
No, but it's amazing answer because obviously, I think I don't know if I know many nutritionists, dietitians, alternative health therapists who didn't go through some sort of troublesome healing journey themselves because those people they understand. They really understand what it means to really go through a very bumpy journey, and they really understand once they found the way how to help other people. So I'm really, really grateful that you actually changed your career. I've had similar stories, so it affects many, many people in a good way. And I actually have so many clients who now are turning into nutritional therapists and GAPS coaches because their healing not only healed them as a body, as a label, that medical label they got, but also it healed their soul and gave them the new kind of perspective for living. And they don't want to be corporate rats anymore and just do something what really impacts other people's lives, which I'm very proud of all of my clients who've done it. So, Amy, can you tell us, can you actually describe what is ketosis? So how would you describe it to someone who've never heard that word before in the easiest possible way?
So ketosis is a metabolic state that your body enters when you eat very, very little carbohydrate or when you fast and you eat nothing at all. And all it really is that your body switches from its primary fuel being carbohydrate or glucose to its primary fuel being fat. And that can either be fat in the food that you eat or from your own body fat. And as a byproduct of metabolizing a lot of fat, your body produces these things called ketones. And ketones are another source of energy. So you are not just getting fuel and energy from the fat, you are getting fuel and energy from the ketones.
And in terms of how much fat a person would need to consume to get, or how much fat, how much protein, how much carbs a person would need to consume to get into ketosis, is there any kind of guidelines, or what's your clinical experience when your clients are actually getting into ketosis, how much fat they consume?
Yeah, this is a great question because the fact is, ketosis does not come from eating a lot of fat. It comes from not eating carbohydrate. What what helps your body make the switch from fueling mostly on carbs to fueling mostly on fat is when there are not enough carbs to fuel on. So when your carbohydrate intake is very, very low, or again, when you're fasting, your body is not stupid. Your body will say, "Oh, I better find a different energy source because there's so little carbohydrate coming in. I've got to burn something else. Oh, I'll just burn all this great fat." Awesome. And so it's really not about how much fat you're eating. It's about how much carbohydrate you are not eating because every human body on the planet will enter ketosis after about 48 hours of fasting. And so you're eating zero fat, 0 grams of fat, and yet you will be in ketosis because it's the very, very low insulin level that results from the very, very low carbohydrate intake or the very low food intake overall that makes ketosis happen. That being said, people do like numbers, and the experts that I know, and really respect the most will say that a good place to start is under 50 total grams of carbohydrate per day. Some people need to be lower. Some people will not be in ketosis unless they're at about 20 total grams, which is very, very low. And then it's, depending on your individual situation, how much fat you would eat and how much protein to make up the bulk of your diet.
And I just wanted to add context for our listeners because most of our audience are people who follow the GAPS diet. So I just wanted to make a comment regarding fasting. Just please remember, Dr. Natasha recommends GAPS fast, which means drinking meat stock. If you're just starting the GAPS diet, or if you're even more advanced on the GAPS diet, perhaps maybe try not to do water fasting or dry fasting until your health is a little bit more stabilized. But yeah, just drinking meat stock can help with getting into ketosis as well. And I think another thing is that the GAPS diet has so many different spectrums. We've got a full GAPS, we've got intro GAPS, we've got no plant GAPS, and so on. All of those spectrums can be ketogenic. So it's really, really important that for somebody who is just starting and doing a full GAPS, you can get into ketosis just doing full GAPS, but you will need to limit the carb intakes in even more. In regards to no plant GAPS, there are lots of assumptions that people make if I go on no plant GAPS that I'm automatically in ketosis. No, you're not. It may be, but we may touch on that a little bit later on.
And
So,
I just I want to say as well, I am not a big advocate of extended fasting. I just think it may serve a therapeutic purpose, and when it's supervised and it's done safely, I'm not a big advocate for fasting. I just like to point out that everyone will be in ketosis if they fast because it's not the presence of a lot of fat in the diet, it's the absence of the carbohydrate.
yeah, thank you for that point. So we're talking about what that ketosis is and what people should eat or they shouldn't be eating, which actually makes us to get into ketosis. But can you tell us what are actually the key benefits of a ketogenic diet for our gut health, for our hormones, for our brain? Because I know you are very, very big on brain and neurological conditions. So I would like to kind of tap into your expertise there. Like, what are the main benefits of doing the ketogenic diet?
Sure. Let me get to that in a minute. I just, in case anyone out there is new to this, I just want to emphasize that nutritional ketosis, the kind of ketosis that happens when you're on a ketogenic or very low carb diet, is not the same as diabetic ketoacidosis. There are even still medical and nutrition professionals who do not understand this difference, and it's a really important difference because ketoacidosis is a very dangerous, potentially life-threatening situation. Nutritional ketosis is a world apart. They're very different, and so I don't want anyone to be, oh, but ketosis is dangerous, and I'm told I shouldn't have ketones. It's it's just a very different metabolic state, and it's unfortunate that they both have keto or ketosis in their names. So, but in healthy, safe nutritional ketosis, there's tons of benefits. I mean, it's so powerful for improving or completely reversing things like type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome, hypertension, PCOS, non-alcoholic fatty liver, primarily because of the way it affects hormones and metabolism. The biggest thing that it does, the biggest lever that it pulls is lowering insulin levels because a lot of people don't realize that so many of the chronic health conditions that people have today, like the ones I just mentioned, and cardiovascular disease can be added to that list, as can benign prostate hypertrophy, like enlarged prostate, so many, all kinds of skin conditions, skin tags. They result from chronically high insulin, even if your blood sugar is normal. So even if you don't have diabetes, if you have chronically elevated insulin, that might be driving a lot of these health issues that so many people are dealing with. And so keto is excellent for improving or reversing a lot of that. I mentioned earlier that there's so much really phenomenal research coming out now showing how effective keto can be for mental health. And we're not even sure why. It could be the presence of the ketones themselves are known to be very, very good fuel for the brain, very stabilizing to neurons. So that could be part of it. It could be that you get off what I call the blood sugar roller coaster. So rather than these, very high highs and crashing lows of blood sugar all day, your blood sugar is very stable and steady. So you don't have, these issues that can come from that tanking blood sugar. And even for people, now, I wish that this was a magical cure for everybody. It's not, but a lot of people that deal with binge eating or people that would consider themselves sugar addicts or food addicts, they find that keto helps to control all of that or make it go away altogether. And that could also be, again, because you're not riding that blood sugar roller coaster all day, or something stabilizing and therapeutic to the brain about the ketones. I've done presentations on, like you said, neurological and neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. It's incredible what this way of eating can do to the nervous system in providing better fuel for the neurons and again stabilizing like it's complicated biochemistry, but the membrane potential basically in very simplified terms making these cells work better, making the communication between all the neurons function better. So
And
it's
that's
really, I mean, this, it goes so far beyond weight loss. People think of keto as a weight loss diet, and yes, it can help you lose weight, but it's so much more than that.
it's a nice side effect if somebody wants to lose weight, but
Yeah, and you can, because I get the question now and then, you can gain weight on keto too. If you are underweight and you need to gain healthy mass, keto is not automatically a weight loss diet. We like to consider it a weight normalizing diet. So there's actually something I forgot to mention. Lots of people with irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, colitis, all kinds of intestinal issues who get much better on keto, or like you were saying, a no plant gaps kind of equivalent to a carnivore diet where there's no fiber, no plant material at all. And those people, some of them tend to be underweight because their intestines, they haven't been absorbing all their nutrition for many years. When they go on a diet or a way of eating that corrects that heals the intestines and allows them to absorb all those nutrients, well, now they gain the healthy weight they needed to gain.
absolutely, I am a walking proof of that. I've been following no plant gaps several times for a life-threatening stage of Crohn's disease, where I was several times in clinical anorexia, because my body wasn't absorbing anything. So anything would kind of go through me and nothing happened. And once I healed and sealed my gut and followed no plant gaps and I've been in ketosis many times, and I just started putting on weight and just feeling great, and my um, lack of energy went. Everything kind of my cognitive thinking got sharper. Everything improved. But obviously, it sounds like a miracle solution that it's such a great solution for pretty much everything. Obviously, you've mentioned type 1 diabetes, where we have to be a little bit more careful about in the context of ketoacidosis, which is very different to nutritional ketosis. But what about people with, let's say, adrenal fatigue or chronic stress? Because typically those conditions, they have tendency to spike cortisol too much. And there is a lot of information about ketosis actually making that situation worse. What's your clinical experience with that? Do you then adjust the diet in some special way for those people who deal with adrenal fatigue?
No, I think the main thing is that they not restrict their food intake. I don't think when you are healing, that may not be the time to focus on weight loss. So I want to make sure that they are eating. And in fact, I think that keto can be really helpful for those issues because a lot of those people, the women in particular, have probably spent years already under eating, possibly over exercising. And when they do eat, they're not eating the kinds of foods that are giving the adrenal glands and every other part of the body the vitamins and minerals they need. I think that iron deficiency is woefully under-recognized. I think a lot of women have a sort of subclinical anemia or low iron, and of eating more animal foods should help that. And so I don't think that the cortisol problem is an issue as long as somebody is eating adequately and addressing other lifestyle factors.
Absolutely. Well, as Dr. Natasha said, if you want to fix your adrenal fatigue, is the sleep, minerals, lots of mineral salt and other forms of minerals, lots of fat, and yeah, definitely not under eating. And just one point you've mentioned about anemia. Very easy solution. Eating raw liver and drinking beet kvass is going to fix it in few days. Again, walking example of that, it works. So what, in terms of other considerations, what about pregnant women or breastfeeding women? Can they do a ketogenic diet, or is that ketogenic diet a little bit too healing for them, too detoxing for them? And it can cause some sort of risk of, toxicity leaching into the breast milk.
I hesitate to comment, but because, have you ever heard of Professor Tim Noakes from South
Yes,
Africa?
yes.
This is what got poor Professor Noakes in trouble. He commented regarding breastfeeding women and low carb diets, but he was completely vindicated, and so low carb keto has long since been proven safe. I will say that the reason that anyone asks, is keto safe for pregnant women? Is keto safe for breastfeeding? Is keto safe for babies? Is keto safe for the elderly? Is because they have an unfortunate misperception as to what keto is. And when you define keto as what it really is, which is good quality animal proteins, healthy fats, and non-starchy vegetables, why would that be dangerous for anyone? We're not like the problem is that people think keto is a pile of bacon swimming in a lake of melted butter. And that's not what it is. When done properly, it is a calorically adequate, nutritionally adequate way to eat. And so there's no reason that it wouldn't be safe for anyone. And we certainly have many, many women who have had what we call healthy keto babies. Tons of women doing ketogenic diets, doing even carnivore diets, having carnivore babies, and raising their babies basically I mean, babies are born in ketosis but raising their babies on very, very low carb diets. And everyone, please, I am not making individual recommendations for anyone, but I am just stating that when done properly, keto really is just a whole foods diet that happens to not have sugar and starch in it. So I don't, it's hard to see why anyone would think it's unsafe. What we really should be asking is it safe for pregnant women or the elderly or babies or anyone of any age to be eating the garbage that most of us have been eating for most of our lives? That's what we really should be asking.
I totally agree. It's a relentless conversation with people who are asking me, "Oh my God, you eat so much lard. Oh my God, you eat so much, I don't know, organ meats. Oh my God, you're not eating enough vegetables or fruits." But when I was drinking Coca-Cola and eating crisps and processed food, nobody asked me. Nobody even they were actually even sharing that food with me. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's I think
Exactly.
there is a lot of work we all have to do to educate people because everything starts from the education. And as you've mentioned, there are so many misconceptions. So one obviously misconception is understanding what keto diet is. But have you actually experienced when you discussing ketosis with or keto diet with your clients or your audience? Do you see other common misconception about keto?
There's a lot. There's some people think that you have to be measuring your ketones, and you can if you want to. You can measure ketones in your blood, your breath, or your urine. But I always tell people what matters is the results you're getting, not your ketone level. So if you feel well, if whatever you are trying to improve is improving, then you don't need to know your ketone level because it's working. But I do think there might be certain conditions for which maintaining a certain threshold of ketones could be helpful. We actually don't know. Nobody's proven this yet. But that's where personal experimentation comes in, where somebody, I think particularly the people who are doing keto for mental health or a neurological condition or a neurodegenerative issue, they might find, wow, I feel best, I function best, my symptoms are best controlled when my ketones are at X level or higher. But most people don't really need to measure. The macro thing is huge. We kind of already mentioned that. People think, what should my macros be? Macros meaning the percentage of calories in your diet from protein, fat, and carbohydrate. And there's really no magical macros. The number one thing for keto is keeping the carbs very low, and then the amounts of protein and fat you would eat depend on your goals. So, I tell people your fat macro, like if keto was only about eating lots and lots of fat, then you could eat 10 bagels or a loaf of bread. And as long as you smeared enough butter and cream cheese on that, you'd be in ketosis because your quote, quote, fat macro would be, nobody's going to be in ketosis eating that way, no matter how much fat you add. So, just those misperceptions that there's some kind of math that makes keto work. Or, people will say carrots aren't keto or red peppers aren't keto. There's no such thing as a keto food. Foods are not ketogenic. Your body is ketogenic in that it generates ketones. And the amount of carbohydrate that any one individual can eat and still be in ketosis differs. Some people really need to be super low, like below 20 total grams or so. Some people can have more. Some people can have a piece of bread or two every day and still be in ketosis. Not everybody. So it's very scientific, but it's also an art that requires a little bit of experimenting to see where any one person is going to get their best results.
I love that because sometimes, just being on any therapeutic diet is already complex, already stressful. And then when we add another layer of, I don't know, measuring your ketones, you have to do your blood test every morning, first thing in the morning. Maybe you do the breath test, maybe you do the urine test. Based on my experience, the urine and breath ketone test is not very reliable. I don't know if you've got the same experience. And if somebody wants to test ketones, the blood ketone test is probably the best to track. But yeah, it's a relentless conversation about clients. How much fat should I be eating? How much protein should be eating? I always say like eat meat close to the bone. You will have a perfect ratio of protein and fat. You don't have to worry. Just dish the chicken breast because it's not very uh, nutrition full of nutrition. It's just a lot of kind of condensed protein. So stick to meat close to the bone, and you don't have to worry about calculating anything. But for those people who are a little bit more structured to start with, especially when they start the healing journey and they want to measure things, what sort of levels of ketones from the blood ketone test do you see when people start seeing benefit?
Let me get to that in 1 second. I just want to go back to what we were saying before. One another big, I think, misperception about keto is that you have to eat a lot of red meat or a lot of bacon and all that. And Certainly, I advocate for an animal-based ketogenic diet, but you can do a vegetarian keto diet. I know that that's not really GAPS friendly, but you can do a vegetarian version. You can do a pescatarian version, if you prefer to get all your protein and fat from seafood. So it's if someone for whatever reason wants to avoid certain foods, what religious dictates, cultural dictates, you can reap the metabolic benefits of eating this way without doing what you see on social media. And so we could argue as to what the best way to do it is or what the most effective way to do it is, but I wouldn't want anyone to be put off from keto who could potentially really be helped by it if for some reason they don't want to eat red meat or they're allergic to eggs or something. They can still do this in a way that works for them. Um, but with the measuring ketones, I agree with you. I think blood is probably the most accurate, but of course it's more invasive. You have to prick your finger and get the blood, but it's really not painful at all, I don't think. Um, I think the urine strips are okay. They do still work for me. Some people they just don't work as well. But they're non-invasive, but if somebody chooses to measure blood, the first thing I like for people to know is that it can be a little bit expensive, but I want them to check more than once a day because your ketone level is not something static that stays the same all day. You could measure it at one point, and if you measure 2 or 3 hours later, it could be much, much higher or much lower. And so if you only measure once a day, you're really only getting that one snapshot. And people sometimes feel disappointed. Oh, my ketones were only 0.4, 0.2. Well, if you had measured maybe half a day later, 8, 10 hours later, maybe it could be double that. It could be triple that. So I like for people to measure more than once. And even if it is a little bit expensive because the test strips are a little bit pricey, it's not something you have to do forever. You don't have to do that for a year. Some people do, but just doing that for a couple of weeks is going to give you some really helpful information, I think. So there's some debate as to where nutritional ketosis starts. People used to say zero point 0.5 in the blood. I think if you have any measurable ketones, that's a good sign. 0.2, 0.3, because the level of ketones in somebody who eats a lot of carbohydrate is zero, maybe zero point 0.1 first thing when they wake up in the morning. But so any measurable ketones is a good sign that your body is metabolizing fat. But to get the biggest therapeutic benefit, some people might need to be higher. So I do think probably above zero point 0.5 is a good threshold, but um, beyond that, it's really individual as to how people respond. Some people might feel amazing at zero point 0.8 or 1.0. Some people might not feel any different until they're above 2.0. So it really varies, but I just hate for people to feel disappointed when their level is low. And again, as long as if they feel well and they're getting the results they want, then the ketone level doesn't really matter. But if somebody's not getting the results they want, then it's like, okay, well, your ketones are kind of low. Let's see how we can manipulate your diet a little bit to get the ketones higher and see if you feel any better.
So for people who actually are in the group of people who don't want to measure ketones, but they want to learn a little bit more how to read their own body in terms of the symptoms and signals, what sort of common symptoms you would say tell us that the body is in ketosis? Because obviously, some people they start having fruity breath or maybe increased urination or some sort of basic symptoms like that without having, I don't know, increased energy. So what are the most kind of common signals the body gives us when it starts burning fat for energy?
You said the first one that I was going to say, which is the bad breath. We call it keto breath, and we don't like it. It's kind of unpleasant, but it's actually a really good sign because that is proof that your body is making ketones. And this is exactly why you can measure breath ketones, because when ketones are expelled in your breath, it's acetone. And so that's what those breath meters detect. And yeah, so bad breath is one of the signs. In people that experience brain fog, the disappearing of the brain fog tends to be a good sign of ketosis, that your thinking is so much more clear and sharp. For other people, it may not be, well, for some, like you said, increased urination. Some people, not all, some people, your urine will take on kind of like a foul smell, or just a stronger odor. And then for some people, this isn't necessarily a sign of ketosis. It's more a sign that your body is at least metabolizing fat, is that you are just not as hungry. Your appetite is much more well controlled. You're able to go longer between meals without feeling like you need a snack or without having that sort of low blood sugar feeling, that feeling like that urgent, murderous rage if you don't eat in 5 seconds. Um, so a lot of that the cravings going away. Some people just note, some people will have a lot more physical energy. Some people will have a better mood. Like if you are someone that tends toward depression or anxiety, your just whole mood will seem brighter. And I wish I could promise that for everyone. It doesn't happen for everyone, but if it's happening for you on a ketogenic diet, you can safely assume that you are probably in ketosis.
Yeah, it's such an individual journey, and obviously some people will experience the positive effects, benefits of getting into ketosis and feeling better, having that, as you've mentioned, that brain fog clearing out, so thinking clearer. But some people will be going through something what is called keto flu. So
Yes.
I would like to dive a little bit deeper into the subject because that's one of the most maybe challenging part of doing the keto diet. So tell us a little bit more what that keto flu is, what really causes it, and what can we do to kind of minimize those unwanted symptoms of keto flu?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more of all the beneficial things that somebody might experience, but yeah, on the not so beneficial side, I will say the good thing about the keto flu is that it is very temporary. It's not something that it should really pass within a couple of days. And there are ways, very simple ways to mitigate the things that come up. The biggest thing that people will experience is headaches, and they could be quite severe. And the number one remedy for this is salt. Your body on a very, very low carb diet, your body needs a lot more sodium. And so whatever type of salt you like is good. Gray, pink, Celtic, Himalayan, whatever. Your body just needs the sodium. So that's really the number one remedy for the headaches. And part of that is because keto has such a powerful natural diuretic effect. And like you said, increased urination. If you're losing a lot more water, you are losing minerals with that, primarily sodium. So you just need to replace the sodium. And some people will have leg cramps. That sometimes sodium alone fixes that. If not, you can supplement with magnesium or the real time tested, proven home remedy is pickle juice or mustard. And so it's actually believed that it's the vinegar that has the effect there because for most people, it takes away a leg cramp within seconds. And that's far too soon for your body to have digested and absorbed anything. So it must have to do with the nervous system. And it's just really interesting. But pickle juice or mustard for those severe leg cramps. Some people will have constipation, which we have to specify that it's normal to have fewer bowel movements on a very low carb diet because you're eating so much less fiber. You're eating a lot less indigestible roughage material. So of course you're going to have less waste passing through. So if somebody is having fewer bowel movements, that doesn't mean they're constipated. Constipation is when your stool is hard and dry and painful to pass, and you feel like there's still some stuff left inside you. It didn't all come out. And so that's constipation. So if somebody has that, then the remedy is magnesium. So I would say maybe three to 400 milligrams of magnesium to start. And if that's not enough, take more, because main effect of taking too much magnesium, that's kind of exactly what you want. The other things that I really have to say about keto flu is that some of what people experience is actually side effects from medications they take, particularly if people who take insulin for type 2 diabetes or type 1, insulin or other medication for diabetes or medication for high blood pressure. Keto is so powerful for lowering blood sugar and lowering blood pressure that sometimes these medications need to be adjusted literally on the first day. I cannot emphasize this enough. So if somebody uses insulin, if you're on blood pressure medicine, you need to make sure that you have medical supervision or that you understand how to safely adjust your medication. Because if you start to feel those signs and symptoms of low blood sugar, like you feel, or low blood pressure, you feel faint, you feel lightheaded, dizzy, woozy, it's not keto. It's actually keto is working for you so powerfully and so quickly that the medications have now become too powerful. And so that's people really need to watch out for that if they use those kinds of medicines.
I do invite every single person who listens to this to our interview. Um, if you're on any sort of medication, please work with a practitioner who understands how to navigate through keto and medication, just to avoid, yeah, you don't want to end up in hospital by by
Yeah.
making a small mistake there. So you've already mentioned that adaptation phase, that keto flu can last a few days. For some people, that would be probably a few weeks. And you've talked about how body produces ketones naturally by reducing the carb intake, by fasting. Are there any other factors that will influence ketones production in the body?
Yeah, yeah, good question. Because we mentioned earlier about protein and why some people who are on a no plant GAPS diet or a carnivore diet are not automatically always in ketosis, because protein will limit the production of ketones. And so but protein is an essential thing to eat. We don't want people to skimp on protein, but for someone who needs to maintain a therapeutic level of ketones, they actually have to watch their total protein intake, not just the carbs. And this is well known in the epilepsy world. Keto actually originated as an epilepsy diet before there were drugs to treat epilepsy. And some people with epilepsy only have control of their seizures when they're on a very, very strict form of keto, where it's, as much as 80 to 90% fat and then just 10% combined protein and carb. That's rare that somebody needs to be that strict. But yeah, overdoing protein can reduce ketones. And I think to be honest, I need to look into this more myself, but I think the menstrual cycle can affect it. So your body may be more prone to generating ketones not that you wouldn't not be in ketosis at all at different times throughout your cycle, but it may be easier for you to achieve higher levels of ketones at different times. Exercise can affect it, sleep, anything really that affects insulin sensitivity and blood sugar can affect ketones. So it's not just what we eat or what we don't eat. That I think that's the biggest factor, but any of these other issues can also affect the ketones.
I just wanted to add a little bit of context for those who are listening and following No Plant Gaps. Don't worry about being in ketosis to start with. You are just calming down that emergency situation in your body by having that soothing, warm meat stock, bone marrow, and other No Plant Gaps foods. And typically, people who decide to do No Plant Gaps, they have a very, very unbalanced microbiome and very high level of toxicity. And according to Dr. Natasha, she says somebody who's got so much toxicity in the body, somebody who's got so unbalanced microbiome, you may struggle getting into ketosis no matter what you do, in terms of even if your sleep is good, even if you do light exercises, because obviously, on a healing journey, we don't promote exercising. We promote movement rather than going to the gym. And so just be patient and don't make ketosis your main goal, that you have to get into ketosis. Just calm that emergency situation in the body with No Plant Gaps. And then if you want to start benefiting from ketosis, then your body will be ready. Some people obviously try to reach out for other things to help to get ketosis. What are your thoughts about, let's say, coconut oil or MCT oil? Have you used it in your clinical experience, and what results have you seen?
Yeah, coconut oil, MC. So I'm sure your audience is pretty savvy, but just in case anyone doesn't know, coconut oil contains some MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, and then there's isolated MCT oil that is just those medium chain fats. And these fats are very special in regard to ketones because your liver will convert those particular fats into ketones more readily compared to other fats, even if you're not on a ketogenic diet. So even somebody who eats a higher carb diet can still have slightly elevated ketones if they eat these kinds of oils. So some people do report that, it became pretty popular to add coconut oil or MCT oil to coffee or tea because some people notice that they feel sharper, cognitively in the morning if they do that. I personally don't notice, but I don't deal with brain fog, but for people who do, they do notice that difference. And then there's been some studies looking at those types of things for Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. And it does seem to be pretty promising. I don't think that they are a substitute for a ketogenic diet, but I think it's a way to boost ketones even further. So I think if somebody wants to see if that's going to help them, I think that those are worth trying, the coconut oil and the MCT oil. And there's these other, they're called exogenous ketones, which is it's like taking a ketone supplement. It usually comes in a powder that you add to water and you drink, and it will definitely elevate your ketones. And I think some people, again, with these conditions, notice that they feel significantly better, they have more energy, they're functioning better. And I think that's great. I think we should do everything use all the tools available to us, but taking those exogenous ketones or even boosting your own ketones in the form of, from using coconut oil or MCT oil is not a substitute for the diet. It's not going to have all of the same metabolic effects like lowering insulin, reducing inflammation, controlling those blood sugar spikes and all that. So I think that those products can be helpful, but they're like any other supplement. They're not a substitute for doing the thing that's going to have the much, much bigger effect.
Yeah, we need to do the foundation work, and without it, you can take any supplement you want, and it's not going to make any impact on your health. Just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify, because I'm sure our audience will be Googling, researching the MCT oils. There are lots of highly processed MCT oils out there on the market. Um, and you obviously mentioned that there are different acids. So So one of the purest MCT oil would have a C8 caprylic acid. Is that correct? And do you know a brand which actually is pure MCT?
As far as I know, well, I shouldn't say that. People would just have to look on the company's website, look on the product label. I think there are several that are pure C8, but I think I need to look into this more myself. I think that C10, which is just a different, it has one more, well, I guess two more carbon atoms, um, may also have therapeutic benefit. So, and there are some MCT oil products that are C8 and C10. So I think. I mean, any MCT oil is highly refined, period. There's no way to get therapeutic doses of MCT, you know, without MCT oil. Like it's an isolated refined product. That's just the way it is. So coconut oil can be useful, but coconut oil um, is just less concentrated in MC. It contains those MCTs, but it's less. And so, but I'm sorry, I don't know which brands off the top of my head are C8 only, but I know at least in the US there are plenty that are just C8, but there are some that are C8 and C10.
And just circling back to those exogenous ketones, um, obviously you've mentioned that they're not a solution, that we need to do the foundation work, we need to do the diet, we need to work on reducing our inflammation, we need to do work on regulating the blood sugar. But what are the pros and cons compared to, let's say, naturally produced ketones in the body?
You mean the pros and cons of taking the exogenous ketones?
Yes.
So, let's start that the pros are probably easier to talk about. I think for someone who is unable or unwilling to do a ketogenic diet, then those exogenous ketones can be a way to see if they would derive any benefit from having circulating ketones. Maybe using those exogenous ketones isn't going to address the fundamental underlying causes of the issues they're experiencing, but the ketones can maybe it's almost like taking a medication where the medication, or in this case, the exogenous ketones, are controlling the symptoms. They're not fixing the problem, but maybe they can give this person a better quality of life. And I write about that in my Alzheimer's book, where if you have someone who's very elderly or is very, severely impaired, good luck getting them to follow a ketogenic diet. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's going to be very difficult. But let's not then withhold a potential band-aid for them in the form of these exogenous ketones, where if these ketones can help their cognition in whatever little time they have left, let's do that. It may be too late. Maybe we can't reverse the Alzheimer's, but can we support this person's cognitive function in the time remaining? So I think, and for some people, the research is mixed, but exogenous ketones might provide a slight athletic performance benefit. So there's like very, very serious athletes who like to experiment with this stuff, almost like a performance enhancing supplement. Um, so I think, and some people, again, find even people that don't have Alzheimer's, don't have cognitive impairment, they just notice that they have a lot better focus and concentration when they use these exogenous ketone products. So that, I guess those are the main pros. The cons are, in my opinion, we we don't really have any long-term data on the safety of this stuff. The body does generate ketones. We know that ketones are not dangerous, but to take a concentrated bolus of ketones all at once, and the human body quote normally only produces ketones under certain metabolic conditions. So what happens when your body does not have those metabolic conditions, but we're pouring ketones into the system? It appears so far to not be harmful, but we don't know what the long-term effects might be. And other than that, I don't know that there are a lot of downsides, except that I don't want to confuse people too much, but these ketones, if you take exogenous ketones, it does actually appear to have a slight effect on raising insulin. And that's because if you have all of this energy coming in from the outside, which ketones are an energy source, well, now your body says, oh, great, I don't need to make any ketones, or like we've got all this energy. Insulin is an energy storage hormone. So I think there are some people who I think react poorly to the exogenous ketones, and maybe it's because of a rise in insulin, and maybe that's lowering blood sugar. I'm being very speculative right now, but I just think that we don't know a whole lot about this stuff. I don't think they're dangerous, and I think they're stances, but I guess that's my biggest caveat is that there's not a lot of long-term data.
And I think what's the most important for our body recognizes food, not supplements. They know, the body knows what to do, how to metabolize, how to process, how to assimilate real food. And at the end of the day, those exogenous ketones are just a supplement. And for some people, it will help, it will work. For many gap stars, oh, we are such sensitive people that it might be a risky game to do. But I think that's a good place to talk about your book, because obviously you've got a fantastic book where you discuss obviously a ketogenic diet in the context of Alzheimer. But tell us a little bit more about your book, and would that book be good for somebody who also would benefit from a ketogenic diet but is not necessarily suffering from Alzheimer? Or is it just specifically um, for Alzheimer, people with Alzheimer?
I think so. My book is called The Alzheimer's Antidote, and I do think it can be beneficial for anyone who's interested in keto. It's really only the first third of the book that focuses on Alzheimer's disease. The rest of the book is really just how to do a low carb or ketogenic diet and dispelling a lot of the myths. Because if I was going to write a book telling people it's okay to eat butter, it's okay to eat egg yolks, it's okay to eat red meat, I had to dispel the fears about saturated fat and cholesterol. And there's a whole chapter in there on B12. And so I think it can be beneficial for even people that are not concerned about Alzheimer's. But if somebody just wants to learn how to do keto and how to do it safely and simply, then my other book, End Your Carb Confusion, is really the better book to read. That one is much more about low carb and keto for weight loss, diabetes, all of the insulin resistance things, the PCOS, even migraines, fatty liver, all of those quote unquote metabolic health type issues. And your carb confusion is really like that. So when Dr. Westman and I wrote that book, that's the book I would want someone to give me if I were brand new to keto. So that's the best way I can describe that one.
That's wonderful, because I think educating ourselves is the biggest tool we can have in order to make informed decisions about our health and the next steps, what we want to do on our healing journey. So I do invite everyone to actually get both of the books.
Oh,
So
thank you.
the more
I,
the more
I, I do want to say though, those books were not intended for a GAPS audience. So people that are doing a GAPS diet, you can apply those principles within a GAPS framework, but there may be things that we include on our food list or that we think might be helpful that you would choose to avoid if you do the GAPS diet.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, it's definitely, we can all take as much of the information out of your book and apply it to if we follow the GAPS diet, and just adjust it. But I think the main principles of the ketogenic diet will be unchanged. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
so I think that the last thing, if you were to share some strategies for people, let's say how to do keto diet when you are in a social situation, or you travel, or you're dining out, you're going to the restaurant, give me three top things you recommend people do in those situations.
So this is where I love to remind people that you can keep it simple. If you don't need to weigh and measure the food and worry about macros and all this stuff, then if you're in an airport, you can just get a package of hard-boiled eggs, get some string cheese, get some nuts. Maybe it's not the greatest quality, but it's better than the other options available. I've never been to a restaurant that didn't have a steak or a piece of grilled chicken or grilled fish with vegetables. And low carb and keto diets have become so popular that it's no longer strange to make those requests. Wait staff do not look at you funny. They know exactly what you mean when you say, burger, no bun, or can I get a green vegetable instead of the potato? You just ask for substitutions, and I've never been in any restaurant where they won't accommodate that. Parties and socializing can be a little more difficult. It just depends on what food is available. But you just do the best you can under the circumstance. Don't put pressure on yourself to be absolutely perfect. If you eat a little something that's not on your plan, no big deal. You get home, very next meal, right back to normal. It doesn't have to send you spiraling for weeks and weeks. I mean, that's really the biggest hurdle, I think, for a lot of people is that they think that the one meal, oh, the day is ruined, the week is ruined. It's not. One meal, you just get right. Don't let that one little thing psych you out into thinking that you've undone all your progress or you have to start over. You just get right back on plan. But again, socializing, dining out, traveling, it's just food. You just look for the protein and fat foods.
That's a wonderful advice. And also, I think sometimes those social situations will be more healing than the danger of eating a potato.
Yes. Oh, such an excellent point. That the mental and emotional health benefits of being with friends, being with family, being in a nice place. I'm not going to say it's going to offset eating the carbohydrate or something, but when you eat that food in that state, and you're not thinking, this is harmful for me, this is bad for me, this is poisoning me. If you just think, I'm so fortunate to be among this lovely company, having this fellowship with people, and just nourish yourself. And I think also in those settings, if you if we don't make it a big deal, oh, I can't have that, I'm keto, or I can't have that, I'm on the GAPS diet. If we just do what we need to do, you don't need to call attention to yourself. You don't need to call out anyone else. I can't believe you're eating that. It's nobody's business what anyone else eats. And so I think if we can leave that out of it, I don't know, the preaching and the proselytizing, or even the woe is me, oh, I wish I could eat that. If we don't really call attention to it, no one else will even notice, really.
Think it's the fear factor which makes it more difficult for our health, and it actually creates the problem in our body. And yes, of course, there is a group of people who have to restrict themselves. Those who have really damaged gut lining, those who are bedridden, those who have few autoimmune diseases for some time. That healthy restriction is going to give you health, but possibly in those situations you wouldn't be going to restaurants at all. But for the rest of us, is bless that food, enjoy that food, enjoy that social situation. Don't think about it, and don't think about, oh, I'm not going to digest it, or I'm going to be in pain, or I will have constipation, or I will have diarrhea, because you're going to manifest it. So just bless the food and have fun.
I
Amy,
I love that you said that because I could not agree more, and you don't hear it very often from people in our field.
well, even when Dr. Natasha speaks with the members, with the gapsters, she said that sometimes when the child goes and visit grandma, and grandma gives a chocolate cookie, but grandma cuddles, that cuddle from grandma is going to be so healing that telling that child, do not eat that cookie. So,
I love that. I love
so
it.
food is the foundation, but it's only one part of the puzzle. And I know that I work with severely damaged gut systems, nervous systems, and people who really need to restrict themselves for sometimes 6 months, sometimes 12 months, sometimes longer. But the moment we start transitioning in eating more and more and more, we have to remove that fear of food. Obviously, I'm not promoting eating processed food here because that's not food, but just give yourself a break and just enjoy life a little bit more. Amy, I've loved our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your wisdom. And if somebody would like to learn more from you or work with you, apart from buying your books, how they can find you.
So my website, unfortunately, is very out of date. It's very in need of an update. But so the best way to contact me is go to stallslayer.com. Stall, like a fat loss stall, Stall, stallslayer.com. And there's a contact page. I also have a YouTube channel, so people can just look me up on YouTube. Amy Berger, Keto Without the Crazy. And I'm on I just recently started a Substack, so anyone out there that is on Substack, you can look for me, but I good old-fashioned email, frankly, is the best way to reach me. It's tuitnutrition@gmail.com. Tuit nutrition, tuitnutrition@gmail.com. But really that's stallslayer.com is there's a contact page there.
I will add all these contact details into the show notes so people can easily find you to discuss help or just to learn from you. Amy, it's been such a pleasure to have you on my podcast, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I hope this is helpful for people.